There we go. Sometimes it takes a while for the little boxer. I've had this one for quite some time, the Iceman versus Sub-Zero. So, of course, I've got a really nice picture of Iceman, and I went, of course, with the Mortal Kombat versus DC version of Sub-Zero. I went with there's two different Sub-Zeros. There's the classic, it was Bi-Han, and then there was the other one, which is like Hua Lang. I cannot pronounce his name, so I please forgive me for that. So more of the fact that this is the younger version. Now, ironically, his backstory is, depending on a video game, he was either one half of siblings, where their father was a cryomancer, same as a geomancer or pyromancer, he controls ice, and almost all things water vapor related, and a human. Of course, the older brother, Bi-Han, ends up being killed and becomes Noob Saibot. So that's what you have on one side. So you have, probably, depending who you talk to, one of the two most iconic Mortal Kombat characters, and the one who pretty much created the ratings board for video games. All because Torchman's head off. And had their spine. On one side. On the other side, Iceman, Bobby Drake, one of the original X-Men. Of course, when he was first drawn, he was drawn as Snow. But Snowman doesn't quite have the gravitas as Iceman does. Depending on writer, he's actually an Omega-level mutant. He's been a founding character. Pretty good when it comes to being a tactician. He's kind of the more happy-go-lucky character. He did spend quite a bit of time in, it was the 70s and 80s, where he was in his first TV show, where I want to say it was Firestar, who was a female, I think she was mutant, he used microwaves. Iceman and Spider-Man. Iceman and Spider-Man work really, really well. They both have that kind of like happy-go-lucky, flippant sort of attitude, great one-liners. So I'll put these two guys in a fight. Why? They're both the ice people. And of course, I do this for my criteria of intelligence, findability, strength, speed, durability, invulnerability, energetic versatility, and X factor. You probably think I'm doing this with the comic scale, but not with the video game scale. I could do the video game scale, but if I wanted to do that, I would probably just find a Mugen version, where I could take the Iceman character, probably from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, or Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but I'd probably stick with 2, because I know that character better. And I'd pick almost any Sub-Zero. As you get farther along in the game, they have more and more abilities. But, did you do it in this format? I haven't done this sort of spreadsheet with the other one yet. I don't quite know how it would line out. So we're right in this. Intelligence. Oh, and the same thing always applies. If it's 5 to 4, a person with 5 more than likely will beat the person with 4. But you can make the argument the person with 4 could beat the person with 5. As you get 6 to 3 and farther away, it's more difficult to make that assertion that one can actually beat the other. So begin first with intelligence. This is kind of a different one, because Bobby is not the field commander. Bobby is normally not shown as being one of the pilots. He's never really given a true hierarchical role in X-Men. And I mean that as in, like, you know, when you picture Cyclops, he's the leader. When you picture Storm, Storm is a leader. And I mean leader as in a very long period of time in the comics, not just, you know, spot leader here and there. He's really never been in that position. He's been going to school for quite some time, so he's got a high level of education. But he doesn't have any sort of real, unique and defining skill or characteristic. So I'm comparing that versus somebody who was pretty much born and raised as an assassin. So now I have to kind of look at, okay, I have a mutant with a high level of education versus someone trained essentially by an interdimensional league of assassins. Who would have an intelligence edge? And this one, I'll probably get some beef for this. I'm actually give that edge to Sub-Zero. I think that just given the fact that he doesn't have the flippant attitude, he has a very much direct manner of dealing with enemies. And, you know, he's actually been trained his entire life for this sort of thing. You know, so Iceman's going to be trying to throw out the one-liners. It's not going to affect Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is going to be like, okay, this guy's made of ice. I wield ice. I need to figure out what his power sets are and use it to his advantage. Fighting ability. Again, same sort of scenario. Man, I'm looking at a ninja. I'm looking at one of the most devastating Mortal Kombat characters. Someone who has legitimately fought demigods, living dragons, and does so very well. Strength. This one might be kind of another bizarre one. I am well aware of the fact that Iceman does have the ability to create ice clones that are on par with Hulk. But that's not Iceman directly. Where in the video games, ironically, depending on how good you were at mashing buttons, Sub-Zero has the ability to break stone, to break diamond. So if he can do that, he's got a pretty good chance of having a high level of super strength. Speed. This one you can obviously tell by the picture. Sub-Zero has the ability to slide on ice, but he's never been shown to actually do what we see Sub-Zero doing, what we've seen Iceman doing. Iceman, of course, having the ability to practically fly on large sheets of ice, and he gets a tremendous amount of speed during that process, much more than what we see from Sub-Zero. Durability. This one's going to go to Iceman. Iceman has the ability, while in ice form, to pretty much be entirely shattered and then reform himself. He's had arms broken off, and he needs enough time to control the moisture around his body to regrow a body part. That's impressive. Invulnerability. This one, they both have the ability to do ice shields. They both have the ability to do ice walls. But look at the two of these guys. The amount of ice on Iceman, higher sense of concussive force, higher sense to bludgeoning, to slashing, to piercing, because he's a solid sheet of ice. They make himself even more dense. He actually can reduce the amount of moisture inside his body to make him almost more kind of like an amorphous liquid. That's impressive. Where Sub-Zero, yeah, he can make himself a sheet of ice and give himself ice armor, but he's not fully comprised of ice. So he still has the layer of ice, but he's still human flesh underneath. Energy projection. This is there at a distance. How impressive are their abilities? And again, we're looking at someone who's an Omega level mutant. Ironically, in the comics, if you were to fully understand his powers, he's a global threat. He actually has the ability to adjust moisture levels across the whole planet simultaneously. So if he wanted, he could actually induce a brand new ice age. If he were to be so inclined to. Versatility. This is how many other abilities do they truly have when it comes to each other. Ironically, a lot of this came down to, I think it was X-Men Children of the Atom, or Son of the Atom, is one of the comics, where Iceman had gotten to the point where he actually able to create sentient ice bodies. So Sub-Zero can create ice clones that make stationary forms. So they're tied up when it comes to abilities, but one of them can make sentient ice. So you're probably thinking, okay, so it looks like Iceman's going to win. X Factor, this is kind of a different one. Let me give this one to Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero has the ability to control ice. It's going to come down to, does he have enough ability when it comes to the controlling of ice to actually control Iceman? So I almost think that what's going to happen is, as this fight begins, initially they're probably going to be like, you know, you're probably going to see ice blasts going back and forth. They're probably going to meet in the center and be like, okay, well, we're tied when it comes to ice. Sub-Zero is probably going to be able to smash his way through any sort of ice clones that we're going to see come from Iceman. He might try to do some of his freezing abilities, his flash freezes, which are not going to be able to be really truly effective against Iceman. Some of Iceman's freezing attacks might not work as well against Sub-Zero given his natural affinity towards ice. I think his ability to control ice is probably going to put Iceman on the back burner for a little bit. It's probably going to affect him, but I don't think he has the ability to truly control and contain an Omega level mutant. And if Iceman gets so inclined, he actually can freeze the blood inside of Sub-Zero, which of course one of his Harakiris is the ability to turn himself into ice, fall backwards, and essentially explode. So it's actually make a pretty solid sort of combat, with one of definitely having an edge when it comes to all of your physical attributes. One is just a ridiculous amount of power, and they kind of meet in the middle when it comes to their ability to essentially harness and control their primary elements. So when it comes right down to it, I'm going to put my money on Iceman. And of course, I went with the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 version of Iceman.